The World Cup has officially kicked off in Qatar with a spectacular opening ceremony and star performance. Acting legend Morgan Freeman took centre stage, playing a starring role before the first match. His appearance wasn't the only surprise after a beer ban was imposed. It's the latest controversial snag for the event under scrutiny for Qatar's human rights record. Accompanied by a long list of celebrities, Morgan promoted unity and respect for the tournament.
This is all so new. All that I have known before was a land that seemed to be in turmoil, with families who were forgotten. And I stopped hearing your voice. Come on over.
Ecuador made history, scoring the opening goal over host Qatar and easing past the Maroons, winning 2-0. Fans celebrating near and far described the match as their dream team start.
I don't know what a dream team start is, but I do know you are listening to the first episode of World Cup 24 here on the Lock Betting Podcast. You can follow the Lock Betting Twitter account on Twitter at LockBettingCom. That's at LockBettingCom. The pinned tweet on that account will be the P&L for the previous month for LockBetting.com. LockBetting.com is my premium pay service that has delivered 113 months in a row of transparent track profit, and I can tell you month number 114, barring a massive disaster, looks safely in the bag. We've had a wonderful month. You should have signed up at the start of the month and not waited until the World Cup. But if you have waited until the World Cup, now is the time. Otherwise, it will be too late to get on those futures picks that were released yesterday. So if you are intending to sign up for lockbetting.com, do it as soon as possible so you can get our futures plays for Qatar 2022. The World Cup Qatar 2022 got underway yesterday, as you just heard, with Ecuador easily winning the opening game. 180 seconds into the game, we thought there was going to be some major controversy with a goal disallowed due to VAR. No one could initially see it, but eventually it was a little bit clearer as to why it was disallowed. One thing I did notice when I was looking on social media is how many people, so-called experts, people that run football accounts, people that give out football betting tips, don't actually know the rules of football when it pertains to the offside rule. I saw a number of accounts highlighting a Qatar defender who was playing Enner Valencia onside in their opinion. Just a single defender was highlighted. Now, the rules of offside are clear. It needs to be two players who are behind the man when the ball is played. So the last attacker needs two defenders to be between him and the goal in order for him to be onside. This was only one, and I can see why the confusion is there, because obviously when you watch football on television and an offside decision is highlighted, we are always looking for the last man. That is because the goalkeeper 99% of the time is in goal. In this instance, we were looking for two players after the goalkeeper because the goalkeeper put himself in a position where he went to go and get the ball. Therefore, when contact was made with the ball making a pass to Enner Valencia, that meant you needed two defenders behind the ball. Yes, one was clear. The other one was undoubtedly subjective. So when you have a subjective decision, which we have every single week in every single league that uses VAR, so this wasn't a big and legitimate controversy. It obviously wasn't helped by the fact that we had a lot of rumours going into the game about how Ecuadorian players had been paid over $7 million to throw the game. It obviously wasn't aided by the fact that the TV footage didn't show the VAR decision clearly, or we didn't get an explanation as to why it was ruled out. And therefore, across the board, we had much speculation in the media, on social media, about whether this was a big controversy to start the tournament right out the gate. But that was negated almost immediately because Ecuador were awarded a penalty. It was a clear penalty, But obviously, if there's bribery and controversy going on, then you're not going to give that. Enner Valencia slotted it in. Ecuador absolutely dominated the first half. They could have gone in 3 or 4 up, and they probably could have scored 2 or 3 more in the second half. But for underbetters, that was obviously a good outcome. We didn't have a good initial day because I was quite high on Qatar, avoiding a defeat. And I was largely riding a statistic that stipulated that no team who had ever hosted the World Cup had lost their opening game. So in the history of the World Cup, no host nation had lost their opening game. And that statistic did not help yesterday because that run came to an end with Ecuador running out as 2-0 winners. So we are up and underway. And so is the virtue signalling from England. We knew we were going to have to deal with this during this World Cup. And England haven't waited to get started. They've been virtue signalling since they've got there, insisting on wearing their One Love armband, despite the fact that Qatar said don't wear it. And now they are insisting on taking the knee. What's been most interesting in the last few hours, that Qatar have turned around to England and said that it is banned, and FIFA have echoed that and said that any player that wears the armband will be booked immediately as soon as they step on the pitch. And England and Wales have collectively decided that they will not wear it. So that's all it took. A yellow card threat. And suddenly all of your beliefs, everything you've been virtue signalling for, everything that you stood for is out of the window. That is fucking embarrassing. May I make a suggestion? Get on with playing football. You haven't won a game in 2022, England. You've been abysmal since you lost the Euro final. You were abysmal in the Euro final. You were gifted a chance of winning your first trophy since 1966 and you binned it because we have the wrong manager in place. This guy decided to shut up shop after being 1-0 up after 3 minutes and blew the game to an Italy team that aren't even at this World Cup because they couldn't qualify. We've been awful since that game. We haven't won a game in 2022, yet you're more interested in virtue signalling.
In terms of player availability, I mean, everybody is available bar James Maddison for tomorrow. I'd say it's a little bit early for Kyle Walker, but he is training with the team, so that's ahead of where we thought he might be at this stage. We're very positive. We're looking forward to this challenge, and I've really liked the way the players have approached training this week. It's been a good transition for us because training a couple of days earlier with the heat, which we wanted to adapt to. Now we've had a couple of lighter sessions later at night. It's quite cool now. So we feel that that's been a good physical tapering for the game. We have discussed taking the knee. We feel we should. It's what we stand for as a team and have done for a long period of time. Of course, we understand in the Premier League that the clubs have decided to only do that for certain games, big occasions. We feel this is the biggest, and we think it's a strong statement that will go around the world for young people in particular to see that inclusivity is very important.
The guy talks about inclusivity, but what he's doing is alienating the real supporters of England who travel to games. I myself have been going regularly to watch England since 1989, and I've never felt so disconnected from an England team. I don't care if this England team win the World Cup or not. In fact, on the Southgate, I'd rather they didn't. I would rather see Lionel Messi going up and getting that trophy and solidifying himself as the GOAT. That's what I would rather see. I think that would mean more to me than seeing this England team winning it, because I don't feel any connection to this team. And I really like some of these players. I think Harry Kane is a great player who deserves to win a trophy. I think he's a great guy. My kid actually met him in person, one of the nicest people. But he's destroying his own legacy sitting there next to that clown because it looks like two clowns, two peas in a pod. It doesn't matter if Harry Kane gets past 54 goals, which he will, and becomes the top goal scorer for England. He's still going to be associated with this idiot who's now earning the nickname Gareth Wokegate. That's what he's being referred to on social media. If you just look underneath the posts for these interviews that Kane and Southgate are doing, They are not getting any support from anybody. Read the room. You're not including people. You are dividing people by doing this. Just go and play football. Nobody expects this from you. The LGBT community, as far as I'm concerned, don't care. The migrant workers, they're already dead. The stadiums are up, they're built, and you still turned up to play. So why don't you just play? Why are you standing up for people when it suits you, and then when they threaten you with a yellow card, suddenly you don't believe in any of this stuff? I mean, it's just so absolutely pointless, and it's so overshadowing the game. In fact, everything political about this World Cup is taking away from the tournament. It's adding a horrible taste to it, and it's making it feel less important. I wasn't sure if it was whether it was being played in November and we were stopping the season for it, and whether it felt weird because it wasn't in the summer, or whether it was this bullshit politics that's attached to every debate. I mean, we're doing a betting podcast here, and we've been forced into talking about it. We're 10 minutes into the show and we haven't started handicapping any games or talking about anything other than politics for the first 10 minutes because we're forced to do it, because we have to talk about what's happening on the field. Yes, absolutely. But at the same time, we have to talk about things that might influence what happens on the field. And these are obviously influential factors because it's all anybody can talk about leading up to these games. So while we're talking about influential factors, let's move on to another factor that may influence what happens on the field. So when England kick off to take on Iran today at 1 o'clock UK time, it's going to be ridiculously hot on that pitch. Now, a lot of people are discounting this because obviously it's the Qatari winter. This was moved because it's obviously going to be insanely hot if it was played in the summer. And they're discounting that because now it is the Qatari winter. The Qatari winter isn't our winter. This is going to be a hot day, especially these games that are happening in the morning in Qatar, which this one is. So this is going to be a big factor. And I would feel that Iran and the climate that they're used to dealing with will be much more used to it and find it much more easier to adapt than England. So I'm not expecting any kind of convincing victory for England, not only because of the weather, but because this Iran team are decent and they don't get beaten heavily at World Cups. If you look at their previous record, they haven't been heavily beaten by anyone. And this is an Iran team who are better than previous teams who have been to the World Cup. So if anybody's expecting this England team who haven't won a single game in 2022 and are more interested in virtue signalling and politics to come in and smash this Iran team, I think you're going to be very, very surprised by what you see this afternoon. For me, I see a low scoring game. If we have a look at the odds, the books have got England as a very, very short 1-3 favourite here, with it being 18-5 on the draw, and Iran seen as the 10-1 underdogs. Massive price. And they've got the over-under here, with the under juiced to 4-6 and the over here available at 11-10. If you shop around, you can get the under at around about 3-4 best price. So the bookies are a little bit more aware of it. I haven't generally seen this on social media, but because this is going to be the first game played at this time slot, and tomorrow we have a game at an even earlier time slot with Argentina kicking off to play the Saudis at 10 o'clock in the morning, I think we're going to see more written about the fact that these early games are very, very hot. And I think hot games do lend themselves to an under. England, of course, have the better quality. So if anybody's going to nick this low-scoring game, I can see it being England. They have a player there in Harry Kane who scores goals for fun. And this is what Harry Kane's there to do. He's in there to take a chance. He's in there to score a penalty if England get one. And that's how tight I think it will be. I think it will be a tight game decided by a moment where a top player makes a difference, or by a mistake, most likely made by Iran, because England are going to dominate possession in this game, whilst Iran set up in a defensive low block. So I'm looking at England narrowly edging out this game today. I don't see Iran scoring. So if England don't win this game, I do think they'll be held to a 0-0 draw where they just can't break this team down in the heat. England themselves conceded just 2 goals in 7 Euro 2020 fixtures and 1-0 4 times in that tournament. And I'm using that tournament data rather than what we've seen from England throughout 2022, which has been a very, very poor England team. I'm looking for England to get serious here and get back to how they were on the defensive end. Meanwhile, you have an Iran team who have scored just 3 goals in their last 2 World Cup appearances. So they've been at 2 World Cups and they've only scored a combined 3 goals. And of course, they face an England team here that have won 7 of their World Cup qualifiers to 0. So I think it's going to be difficult for Iran to score, but I also think it's going to be difficult for England to score and to break down this Iran team, especially with the poor form that they have coming into this game. And with Iran sitting in with a low block in the heat, that's going to be difficult for England. So I think my strongest lean for this game would be to take under 2.5 goals. I also like Iran on the plus 1.5 Asian handicap, as I don't see England winning this one by 2 or 3. I do think it will be a single goal. And my long shot would be to take England to win this game 1-0. So the 1-0 scoreline with a hedge on the 0-0 scoreline, which you can find at much bigger odds. If you shop around, you can get the 0-0 as big as 12-1 here. So I would recommend a small sprinkle hedge on that scoreline, because it's definitely something I can see. I've seen England be held to 0-0 draws at major tournaments before, where they were supposed to win comfortably and they just weren't able to break a team down. So I think 12-1 being offered here on Iran, shutting England out for 90 minutes, especially given England's recent form, is a decent hedge against any selections that you have for England to possibly win this game. So looking at the other games today, the 4 o'clock kickoff sees Senegal taking on the Netherlands. The Netherlands are the 4-6 favourites here. It's 11-4 on the draw, and it's 19-4 here on Senegal. I think that's a decent price on the Dutch, especially given Senegal haven't come with Sadio Mane. Even when they have Sadio Mane, this is a team who like to sit in defensively. They are a very defence-minded team, but that's been successful for them because they do come in as the African Nations champions. But anybody would miss the second best player in the world, and that's what Mane is officially. He came second in the Ballon d'Or. So I feel that Holland will be able to eke out the win here. They're in unbelievable form since Louis van Gaal took over, and this is a top-class manager. He's one of the better managers in this tournament. When you look at England hiring Gareth Southgate and you compare the fact that the Dutch are coming in here with someone like Louis van Gaal and his pedigree, that is a big, big advantage. The Netherlands are unbeaten in 15 games. They've won 7 of their last 9, while Senegal are without Sadio Mane, and they've actually only won 4 of their last 10 games coming into this. So they're not exactly coming here in great form, despite the fact that they won the AFCON last year. They do tend to draw a lot of games. They are overly defensive, and I don't think they'll be able to shut out the Dutch here. I like Holland to win this game on the money line. If you want to get a little bit more value, if you want to extract a little bit more value out of the selection rather than taking 4-6 minus 150, I would recommend tacking on the under 4.5 goals, because that gets you to 10-11. So it almost gets you to even money plus money here. So take that if you don't fancy 5 goals in this game. I don't. I think Senegal will sit in the defensive low block as well and invite Holland to break them down. But Holland have a lot of quality in this team, and I do think they'll secure a breakthrough in what will be another tight game. I think we're going to start this tournament with 4 unders. I think we're going to see under 2.5 goals in the England game. We saw one yesterday. I even think we could see one here. And also the game we're about to talk about as USA take on Wales in a game that could, in the eyes of many, decide who goes through the group with England. Now, that means that people are massively discounting Iran, which they are. I've seen that across the board. People looking at this game between USA and Wales as a must-win, or more likely a must-not-lose. USA are the 11-8 favourites to win it. I personally don't understand that. It's 21-10 on the draw, and it's 11-5 on Wales. USA are the higher-ranked team, but Wales are a team with bigger pedigree, and they come into this having played a much stronger strength of opponent, and they've done well at 2 championships. They got to the semi-finals at Euro 2016, and they got out of their group at Euro 2020, which was only played last year. So for me, what they've done against stronger opponents outweighs what USA have mainly done in CONCACAF. USA have some good young players, and I think these players are going to come more to the forefront when USA host the World Cup in 4 years' time. I think that's when USA can have a decent run. And when I say decent run, they're not going to be a contender to win it, but they could get to the round of 16. They'll get out of their group. They may even get to a quarter final, but I just don't see them doing anything here at this tournament. When you look at the way it's been scheduled as well, if England do win their first 2 games, like many people are expecting, then Wales are the team that England will rotate against in that final game. Now, a rotated England team should still beat Wales, but that's an advantage for Wales. It's also an advantage for Wales that they don't have this rivalry with Iran, because if Iran win one game at this World Cup, it's going to be against the USA because of the personal issues between the countries. So I can see Iran raising their game even higher for the US game. Obviously, when Wales take on Iran in the second game, we'll know a lot more about how this group stands, whether we've got a winner from the Wales-USA game, whether England have made that winning start against Iran. But as for this game, I think it's a must not lose for either team, because it's basically your classic 6-pointer scenario where if one team loses, they do significant damage to the hopes of the other team while massively increasing their chances of success and going through. And I think this is your classic 6-pointer. When you look at England being perceived as the strongest team in this group by many, and rightfully so, you think that the others are playing for second place. And therefore, if you can take 3 points away from one of your opponents whilst gaining 3 points, this is the absolute definition of a 6-pointer. So this is almost the biggest game of the day for me on paper, because if Senegal lose to the Dutch, they can still recoup the points against Ecuador and definitely against Qatar, who look like they're going to be the absolute whipping boys in their group. England can recover from dropping points against Iran, and Iran will still have a lot to do unless they actually beat England in that game. But for this one, this puts either team in a very difficult position if they lose. Therefore, I'm looking for a cagey game. Under 2.5 goals again would be my lean. And if anybody wins it, I would take the value on Wales as a pick. I also think there's value on the draw, because I do think it will end up being a draw. But I do think there's also value on Wales as an underdog. But I think the under is the standout play. I definitely don't see 3 goals in this game given the stakes, with the stakes, in my opinion, being the loser is pretty much on their way home in this one, and the under 2.5 goals is available for you here at 4-6 -150, completing the sweep of under 2.5 goals that I'm expecting today from all 3 games. So that concludes your first episode of World Cup 24. Obviously, if you look at the title, it says 24, so expect a show every 24 hours, and I'll be dropping these exclusively on the Lock Betting podcast feed. If you want to get all of my official plays every single day, then head over to lockbetting.com and sign up for the Soccer Pack. The Soccer Pack will get you all of the World Cup plays, but of course, if you want all sports, and we are killing it across the board, sign up for that top $125 package. That's it for me and this edition of World Cup 24. Good luck with all of your bets as always, guys, and thanks for listening.